My first glimpse of baseball was looking out the window at about 3 or 4 years old and seeing the lights at Seal Stadium, which was at 16th and Bryant, about 13 blocks away. And I was wondering what was going on there. And my dad took me to a game about 1945, 46. And I was a little kid, I didn't know anything about baseball. So I wasn't watching the game. I was asking for hot dogs and peanuts. And he interpreted it as I wasn't interested. And he was wrong, of course. But he never took me to a game again. And then I started going to Seal Stadium to see the Seals at about 1952. And they always had spring training exhibitions with the Giants and the Yankees and the St. Louis Browns and the Cleveland Indians came out. And I used to go to those games, and that's the first time I saw major leaguers. And so I was interested in the game. I made the high school baseball team. I struck out about 3 times, and that was it. And I remember starting to think, how could I stay in the game? I started writing on a high school paper, and it came easy to me. I could go to the games by writing about it, so that was a simple goal. And when I was growing up, only the 49ers were established, and I remember it wasn't difficult to get a job in those days. So I ushered during high school at 49er games and the $1 Million backfield. We got in free to showing people to their seats, and I was hooked. At City College of San Francisco, I came under a professor named Joan Morse, and she had an inroad to the Chronicle. So it was a fairly good path to employment. And I became the sports editor for 2 years and the editor-in-chief for a half a season. And I remember I get C's and D's in other classes, but in journalism I was at A+, and that was my focus. I didn't care about anything else. When I went to San Jose State, it was a reputation as the best journalism school in California. So I went there, and I became sports editor for a year, and I got to cover different stuff. I got to cover the Olympic boxing trials at the Cow Palace. And in 1960, because the San Jose coach was Julie Menendez, and he was the Olympic coach. And I saw a young heavyweight called Cassius Clay win his first bout and become the eventual Olympic champion. And it was a good area for sports. It wasn't difficult to get a job in those days. People didn't travel around the country to get jobs. If you grew up in an area, you got a job in the area. I was a 28th man on a 28-man staff at the Chronicle. So I didn't see my future in writing baseball. And I told the sports editor, Art Rosenbaum, and he found an opening in Berkeley on a 4-man staff. So I had control of the staff when I first got there. Giants came out in '58. The Raiders came out in 1960. The Warriors came out from Philadelphia in the mid-'60s. And the A's came out in 1968. I would work 12, 14 hours a day. I put out the paper in the morning, I wrote a column occasionally, and then I went to do the Giants or the Warriors at night, and the 49ers on the weekend. So I didn't have a winter off like most baseball writers did, but I didn't mind. I was used to working hard, The Giants came out with assurances that a new ballpark would be built. They tolerated Seal Stadium for 2 years because it only held 23,000 people, and Candlestick was going to hold 60. They rejected the idea of putting a deck on Seal Stadium because no parking was available in the area. So they had Candlestick Point, and they didn't study how cold it would be at night. And that was their mistake, because when they went out in the air the afternoon or the morning and they inspected the building process, they never went out there at night, and the fans had to endure that. And I think the fans at Candlestick were the hardiest ever. They really had to like baseball to endure those conditions. Willie Mays was the greatest player I ever covered. He just made things happen. He worried pitchers. They knew he was on base. He can score without a base hit. He could steal second, draw an overthrow, and get on third. And then something would happen. He could score on a grounder. He dominated the game at that time. And he had trouble getting a house in San Francisco. There was a racial thing. Didn't want to sell him a house. Neighbors protested. All they knew is he was black, and that wasn't good enough for them. You know, it's amazing. We grew up in that era. And when I was with the Gazette, the management was fairly conservative. They didn't like my views, but it was a changing time, and I was kind of a buffer. I had liberal views, and I understood the plight of the black athlete. I grew up in the Bay Area, and I was exposed to a lot of different types of people. I wasn't narrow in my view, and I think I helped them by bringing in another view. If I was a conservative writer in Berkeley, like Fox News, I would be in trouble. What athletes would talk to me? I first heard of Franklin Muley when he was producer of the Giants broadcast, and with Lon Simmons and Rush Hodges. But I really got to know him when he took over the Warriors, and I was often mistaken for him. I had a beard, and I was the only guy in the press row that had a beard, and people would ask me for autographs thinking I was Franklin. And I got a kick out of that. I followed the Warriors, and it was a lot of fun because they weren't drawing big crowds, and you got to sit front row center, and my college buddies would sit next to me, and we had a ball. And after the game, we go to a restaurant for drinks, and we go up to North Beach, and Wilt would be cruising to the jazz joints in North Beach on Broadway, and he was a night owl, and it was a fun time. I was a young man. I was in my 20s, so I was living the life of Riley. The Giants had territorial rights, but they waived them to let the A's in. They were the second fiddle, so Oakland had to do something to steal the thunder from the Giants. Charlie Finley was a smart businessman. Charlie had a good scouting department, you know, and they signed Jim Hunter, Reggie, and Rick Monday out of Arizona State, Bert Campaneris, Sal Bando. They signed Vita Blue. They were all homegrown products. And I mostly covered the Giants, except with the postseason. I went to the A's to the World Series. And the A's became successful within a couple of years, winning the World Series in 72, 73, and 74. But the A's never got the credit they deserved. The Berkeley Gazette moved to Richmond and became part of the Richmond Independent. It was called the IG at the time. They were more conservative in Richmond, and I don't think I was as well received. My views didn't hit home as much. East Bay Today, Reach for the Peach, was a prototype for USA Today. Gannett bought the Tribune, and they started a test prototype, and we didn't know that. But they made me their first sports hire, and they told me I can cover the Giants. So I said, wow, I can finally travel and be a baseball writer. And that appealed to me. So when the Tribune offered me the job, East Bay Today, I jumped at it. I had a writing talent, and I made use of it. I always had the ability to interview people, but I didn't like talking. I couldn't be a sport writer today. You have to be on TV every other day. Jobs are scarce, the newspapers are dying, and I'm glad I'm not looking for a job today.
I'm extremely grateful and humbled to be standing here before the great players I covered to receive recognition for doing something I loved and was fortunate to get paid for it. I was able to write about the game I loved, staying close to home, never looking for a job, and never blogging or tweeting. I don't embrace technology, as you've probably figured out, but I do embrace this award, and thank you very much for this honor.
I came along at the proper time for the expansion of Bay Area Major League sports. I was very fortunate, and I never took it for granted.